Welcome to Conversations with Leaders. My name is Jake Burns. I'm an enterprise strategist with AWS. Today I'm joined by Brandon Pulsipher. He's the Vice President of Cloud Operations at Adobe. Brandon, welcome.
Thanks, good to be here.
So can you start off, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and what you do at Adobe?
Yeah, I've been at Adobe. I came about 12 years ago through acquisition, spent 10 years before that with a startup in the digital marketing and kind of digital transformation space, and now I've spent the last 10 years helping Adobe along this cloud journey as we've expanded and just taken that journey together with both the solutions that Adobe purchased and acquired, as well as the transition of the Creative Cloud that most people are familiar with.
And so what does cloud operations at Adobe do?
Yeah, it's I think intentionally broad term so that we can put whatever we want in there, but focus on the cloud infrastructure, whatever sort of your interpretation of cloud is. If that's internal, external, kind of public, private, all of the end-to-end infrastructure, however we deliver that. Focus on the cloud spend, cloud efficiency, and kind of cloud maturity, and just kind of helping the business continue to adopt and use the modern technologies in a way that adds value.
I understand that at Adobe, you've tried a few different organizational models and models for IT. How do you know a model is working, and how do you react quickly when you find out that things aren't working?
Yeah, I think this kind of concept of agile and kind of the engineering world making its way to IT has been a really fun kind of merger of mindsets to see the IT kind of industry embrace that. And I'd say that's part of what we've been through in this cloud journey where operations and engineering really come together. And so we've had to charter a little bit of our own path through that kind of DevOps, SRE. What does that mean? How do we get there? How do we move from the sysadmin world to this new approach of infrastructure as code? And we've been through quite a few organizational adjustments and changes to get there. And I think 3 or 4 organizations and organizational names over the past 3 or 4 years, but folks have embraced it and I think are excited and energized by new ways of doing things, and so it's been an exciting transition.
So Brandon, a big focus for you has been cloud efficiency. I'm curious, how do you track that? And maybe we could start off, what is cloud efficiency?
Yeah, I think that is an important question because I think it's one of these things we're still kind of defining. There's not a sort of industry definition or a set of standards that necessarily define that. So I think it a little bit has to be defined individually by each company or organization and what their objectives are. But I think it's right. What's important in terms of efficiency? How do we make sure we're using every dollar the best way and creating value? We all want to drive every dollar we can into kind of innovation and creativity and value for our customers. And so if we're spending extra dollars on infrastructure, then we're not able to do that. So I think it's about making sure we have the right balance in that investment.
Well, coming from Amazon, I really love that answer. It's every dollar you're not spending on customers is not efficient. That's a good way to look at it. Do you think there's a trade-off between efficiency and agility?
I don't think there has to be. I think actually they fit really well together. I think agility, the ability to be elastic and scale up, and I think a lot of companies scale up really well because we are forced into building for that from an IT and an engineering aspect, but the same forcing function doesn't exist to have to scale down and the other side of agility. And so, but I think there's a lot of value there that can be derived. They don't have to be competitive. Great agility and the ability to be elastic and spin up and spin down, right, can create a great customer experience and drive better efficiency. So it doesn't have to be sort of choose one or the other. There's a sort of two-for benefit you can get.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it's something that I always talk about. We love to talk about scaling up, but we don't talk about scaling down often enough. And it's kind of like scaling down is too boring to talk about. It's like cost savings and eliminating waste. But actually, I think if you take a more long-term view, and I wonder if you agree with this, just having that ability to shut things off and stop paying for them and having the ability to scale things down tends to make organizations bolder in what they try and what they experiment with, because the cost of failure is much less. So it actually has kind of an exciting benefit that kind of stems from that ability to scale down.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that's true. The ability, and I think the more that we can we can drive value and understand agility and right, how do we prevent failure, but how do we learn from failure? Because inevitably in any kind of agile approach, there's going to be some degree of failure, and so we have to understand and acknowledge that as a risk, and just make sure we learn from it and adapt. And right, that failure is not a problem. The same failure again and again is a problem.
Yeah, I would go so far as to say if you're not failing at least some of the time, you're probably not trying hard enough.
Yeah, I think that's true. And right, the challenge we haven't acknowledged in this industry is how do we embrace the ability to be agile and experience that failure, but abstract our customers from being impacted by that.
Right, exactly. So a good failure would be one where it's something where your customers aren't impacted, but you're learning and you're not making that same mistake over and over again, obviously. And a bad failure would be one where it does impact customers. And obviously we don't want to have those kind of failures. So a correct strategy would be, or a good strategy would be, one where we're allowing ourselves to fail, but not have it impact our end customers.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that's the end goal we all have.
So Brandon, one of the things that comes up when we engage with executives going through transformations is this question: does it have to be a top-down led transformation, or can it be start from the middle? Can it grow organically from the bottom? I'm wondering, how did this transformation come about at Adobe, and what are your thoughts on how to initiate one?
Yeah, I probably, I don't think it has to come from top down. And often probably, while maybe sometimes there's a vision statement of, hey, we need to change. That certainly the how we get there often comes from the people who are sort of on the front lines and right, they have the best insight often. And so I think, if we make these transformations, at least without getting the input and having that dialogue with the teams, I think that'd be a miss, because there's so much we can learn. But so I think it should be a combination of both. And that said, I think that's when it works really well. When we've gone through some of our transformation, I think we struggle a little bit with this kind of DevOps mindset transformation for a while. And I think for us, that secret sauce was that balance of kind of frontline managers and executive sponsorship and leaders that were committed. And when we sat down every week with kind of these frontline set of managers and directors, and we shared the stories and we talked about the need, and we didn't let up. We did that for month after month, and people started to see that this is real and we're serious about it. And you saw it sort of come together throughout the organization. It wasn't being pushed from the bottom as an idea that people felt is not going anywhere. It wasn't some top-down mandate. It really was this sort of combination of bringing the right things together.
Interesting. So it sounds like there was some planning involved before you got started.
Yeah, I think planning, and I think attempts and failed attempts, and because we probably started early on with that sort of top-down mandate, like, hey, we need to move, we need to move faster to this kind of DevOps mindset, and infrastructure as code, and that sounded really good, but not every network administrator or system administrator is ready to start writing code, and so I think we certainly had to invest in the skill side of that, and both invest in the people we had, and supplementing that as we hired with, maybe we hired a software developer and not a sort of infrastructure person, and so how do we sort of creating that mix, I think it was valuable, but yeah, it took some time, and it definitely has been a journey.
So any last advice? I mean, there's a lot of people out there who are still, believe it or not, starting out on their transformation journey, or starting out with the cloud. For those that are just starting out and are trying to lead a change, any kind of general advice that you would give?
I think just to be willing to try new things out. I think, again, another sort of I think leadership concept or quality that I think we're coming around to is this vulnerability, and so being willing to be a little bit vulnerable, and maybe it's have an uncomfortable conversation to say, I think we need to make a change, and why is this, what's the value this is going to create, and then step forward and try it out, and then be willing to say, hey, it worked or it didn't, and then I think finding the right partners to help you along the way is an important aspect. We don't have to go this alone. There's, fortunately, while there's still a lot of folks maybe early in the journey, there's a lot that we can learn from others that have gone before us in a lot of ways.
I agree. There's never been a better time to be doing a cloud migration or transformation, just because we have so many great examples nowadays. Unlike a few years ago, right? A very short few years ago. Nowadays, we have so many great examples of what works, some examples of what doesn't work. And so we're not going into the unknown anymore, right? So learn from those who've done it before.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's absolutely valuable concept. And again, maybe not every element of that applies, but I think that's one of the things we see value in with AWS is sometimes, we're still migrating workloads to the cloud, and we may hit, we may sort of transition a workload that we've done. It's very similar to other things we've done, but occasionally we're hitting something that we haven't done before. And so just the ability to call on our partners and say, hey, you've probably seen this before, we haven't. Help us understand how we might navigate this and what you've seen work or not work, so that we can try and avoid those, those pitfalls.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely having a strong partner to rely on gives you a competitive advantage, and it's very wise to take advantage of that. So Brandon, I really want to thank you for being with us today. It was a great conversation.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. So it's always exciting to talk about the transformation.